wish come back to Nashville meant that I was on your mind. I wish you'd say it with that look you get when she walks by. I don't always feel like this, it's just sometimes I think that I wish you'd say come back to Nashville, but mean come back to me.
Last night I cast on a project that has been on my wish list for quite a while, which is just a very traditional vintage pattern, old colorwork sweater, and this is what it looks like at the current moment. There's not a lot to see yet, only the folded collar that I knitted, but essentially I had some Icelandic yarn at home. This is léttlopi, and I decided to use it for an Icelandic sweater. The one I chose is called hestapeysa. I don't know how that's pronounced, so that might be wrong, but I think it means horses, which makes sense because there's little horses on the sweater, so it's very cute. And I decided to make quite the list of changes to this, so it's not the most traditional project anymore. But, well, I'm using the red wool for it. I have the old tiny pattern for it. It's a free pattern, by the way, if you're interested in making it too. I am essentially changing a bit about everything, which I'm slightly conflicted about because I did want to knit a traditional sweater, but also I want to have fun while knitting it and then also have a finished outcome that I will actually want to put on. So I guess we're landing somewhere in the middle. I'm keeping most of the color work the same. I am making some changes to that, which is just due to the yarn amounts I have, because I did get this yarn actually to self draft something, and I kept trying and it kept frustrating me and it kept not working out. So at some point, like 2 weeks ago, I just gave up on it completely. I was just looking at this yarn with so much dread. And then I had the idea to just make something else with it, because I mean, I have a sweater quantity of it at home, so why wouldn't I use it? And I have 3 colors. Which is exactly how many you need for the sweater, but you need like slightly different amounts. So I mainly have this white, which is going to be the main color and the background color of everything. Does this have a name? I'm not sure. Apparently not. Okay, the color is called 51 if that helps you, but whatever. I will put the names in the description. And then I have 3 balls of this dark blue, which is very, very pretty. And I have 1 ball of this red, which is also really nice. And that doesn't quite match up with how much yarn I am supposed to have. So I made some slight changes to the color work. Essentially, I'm not gonna make the main part of the yoke a different color than the body. So all of that is gonna be the white. And then the horse and the little patterns up top will be alternating between the red and the blue. And I'm hoping that should work out. I think it should. So that's the only change I'm making, like not on purpose. I will go more in depth about the changes that I'm making as soon as I get to them, but just generally I will be knitting the entire sweater top down instead of bottom up because I want to try it on and it's more fun, and especially if I'm not sure with the yarn amounts I have, it's just easier to see when I'm running out. I will be making like small adjustments to stitch counts where it makes sense to me because all of the finishings are very, very tight on this. I already made changes to this actually. So basically the neckband and all finishings on this are very, very tight and tiny. So they are knitted on a 3.5mm needle, even though the pattern for the stockinette part suggests 5mm needles. And then for all of the finishings, there's also decreases, I think. Maybe not for the cuffs, I'm not sure anymore. But for the hem and for the collar, there's decreases so that you also have quite a small stitch count in addition to having such a small needle. Now for me, I hit gauge for the stockinette part on 4mm needles, so I will be using those for the main part, and I am still knitting the finishings on 3.5, so I didn't size down any further for that. And also the amount of stitches that I cast on here is the same amount of stitches that the yoke stitches are later gonna have, so I'm essentially omitting the decreases here. As far as I read about it, older patterns have more significant decreases in all of the finishings essentially to keep the cold out. So if you have your cuffs or your hem be tighter, then obviously like wind and whatever cold can't get in as easily. So that makes sense for an old Icelandic pattern. I, however, do not live in Iceland and do not need my sweater to keep the wind out. So I will just have like a comfy sweater that is a little bit looser in those areas. Which is why I cast on the yoke amount of stitches for the collar already. And as you can see, I started working on this yesterday when I was a little bit frustrated with my other project, so I just wanted like a fresh start on something. So I cast on here and I was a little bit mad and just knitting very fast and not focusing as much. So this is what my ribbing ended up looking like, and I like thought about redoing it, and then I thought, you know what, it's a double folded collar, this is gonna be on the inside anyways, and then I knitted the fold line and just did half twisted rib for the proper part of the collar that will be on the outside. So it's kind of crazy to see the difference between the two of those. I should be knitting more half twisted rib, clearly. Anyways, I'm going to start on the colorwork now, which is clearly the most exciting part, and I won't be omitting any rows from the yoke. So for the children's size and the women's size, you're supposed to omit some of the rows. And I think I will just knit the men's size for now. I think from the measurements it gives for the bust circumference, I would prefer that fit, and then I'm just gonna adjust where I feel like I need to. I think the larger yoke will be fine for me, and I think I will probably shorten the sleeves of the men's version to be closer to the women's length and stuff like that, you know, like where it makes sense. But generally I'm trying to get it to be a bit more oversized. And I also think, since I'm not switching colors between the yoke and the body, that I might actually have space to put some short rows in, but I will get to that point and see how I feel about it. For now I'm just gonna start doing some, okay, actually the first row is just one color, so not that much color work yet, but I'm really excited for this. I haven't knitted color work in what feels like forever. I think it was like almost half a year ago the last time I did a color work project, so I've been missing it. I love doing color work. And also this mostly seems like pretty simple color work, at least the patterns appears only like 2 colors at a time, and then it's always just a few stitches in between, so you probably won't have to do any float catching or anything like that. I might have to look a little bit more in depth at the horse later on, but let's first like start understanding this pattern by actually
Last night you went and bought some cigarettes, and I know that she hates it when you smoke. I don't know why you're breathing in, my friend, but you've got to breathe it out before you choke. I wish come back to Nashville meant that I was on your mind. I wish you'd say it with that look you get when she walks by. I don't always feel like this, it's just sometimes I think that I wish you'd say come back to Nashville, but mean come back to me.
I did want to take you along for this process more step by step, but I maybe got a bit obsessed with knitting on this last night and finished like a big chunk of the color work already. I did film some clips while I was knitting, but it was dark, so I didn't do any talking. But I'm gonna catch you up on what happened right now, I guess. So I set it up here at like 6, and this is where I ended before I went to bed. I am, first of all, very surprised I only had to knit this once, because usually when I knit color work with a new yarn, I kind of have to test out a bit how I should tension my floats. I feel like that's something, I don't know if I struggle with it or if that's just normal, but I find it a bit difficult to get it perfect the first try. But these floats are very short, you know, the pattern is very easy, so I think that really helped with me getting it kind of good the first time. I think this works out pretty well. And I already knitted, I think, 3 increase rows, and I decided to do make 1 left increases. The pattern doesn't really specify what it wants you to do because, you know, it's an old pattern and it's short, so it just gives you the information that is absolutely necessary. And I was trying to do lifted increases at first because I feel like in round yokes you see them a little bit less, which is why I used them in my Lille blouse when I was designing that, but you do have to kind of design the pattern around that, and this one wasn't, so I ended up just doing the make 1 lefts because, I mean, it's the easiest increase and my favorite, probably everybody's favorite. It's just the fastest, and I mean, I can't see where the increases are placed, so that's pretty good. I've also realized that maybe when I design sweaters, I'm like overthinking it with like ratios and getting all of the increases to be at the perfect round and whatever, because I am doing like so much math to figure out exactly like how much your body increases in that spot and get that increase placed exactly in the right position. And here I'm realizing like I would have never placed the first increase round so low. I would have never increased that many stitches in 1 increase round, and yet it somehow seems to work out. It seems like a sweater that would fit me, and from the projects on Ravelry it seems like it fits a lot of people. So I don't know, I feel like maybe sometimes I'm overthinking my designing a little bit, and that's why it takes me so damn long and is so frustrating along that way. I don't really have anything else to catch you up on. This was just so fun, and so quick, so I'm just gonna keep going here. It obviously becomes more stitches, so I don't know, maybe I'll slow down significantly now, but really, like, I'm just looking forward to the horsies, so I think I'll do the next couple of rounds today probably, like finish these little patterns up here at least. They look so pretty. I would have never thought, like, I mean, I can see the other people's projects and I can see the chart, but this looks so good. I'm like so impressed with it. I don't know. Anyway, everything is going great. I have nothing to complain about, and that's why I don't know what to talk about. I have so much yarn still. I was so worried I would be running out of yarn, and I have so much of it still. Like, that's almost a full skein. I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. Probably a problem is coming along at some later point, but not right now. So right now I'll be happy, and I will see you again when I start my horsies, I think. To do the last motif before the horse yesterday, so this is what my sweater ended up looking like. And I did start on the horse a tiny bit because I was like already in the pattern, and I thought I might as well set up the complicated parts, so when I pick it up again I have somewhere easy to start. I'm not quite sure about this motif, to be honest. It's a bit confusing to me that there's this random white stitch every other circle. Like, it seems like this should be red to make a full circle, but somehow it's not, and I don't know if that was intended or if that's a slight mistake in the color work chart of the pattern, because when I look at the picture, I don't really see this stitch being a different color, but also the picture is black and white and very blurry, so I'm not sure what happened there, if that's intended. It's not my favorite, to be honest. I think if I were to knit this again, I would just make that stitch red as well. But also, like, it's not like it's gonna be visible. Anyways, for the horse, I decided to put in 3 jacquard ladders for each pattern repeat, because otherwise you'd have to span, I think, 14 stitches, and that's just a lot of stitches to be catching your float, especially if it's a couple of rows in a row. So I thought I might as well set up a ladder and just, you know, have that on the backside for a few rows while I do the horse. There is a couple of spots in there where it would just be impractical to do that because it's just a single row, so I guess I will be catching my float there, even though it's a very long float. But I like planned that through already, so I went through all of the horse and I counted out how many stitches are in one color every time and where it would be best to either catch a float or set up a ladder. And I did the setup row already. That was honestly kind of annoying. I'm losing stitches as we speak. It was kind of annoying because I knit colorwork continental and with holding both of the strands in one hand. So you just essentially pick the one you want. But for setting up the ladder, you have to bring your main color yarn, I guess, or the yarn that you want to continue working with, to the front to then knit a stitch with the other color that stays in the back. So every time I had to set up a ladder, which again was 3 times per pattern repeat, I had to let go of both of my yarns, put one to the front, then do a make one left, knit that stitch with the other color, put the color back, pick it up again, hold it the right way, continue knitting. So that was, it took a while. It's a lot of stitches now. But for the following rounds, I think it's going to be fine because both yarns have to be in the front to pull the stitch to continue the ladder, and that way I can just bring both of them to the front and then just pick the one I want. That has been working kind of okay. I like tried it out for a few repeats here. So I think that should be fine, even though this was like a little bit more work than would have maybe been necessary. I don't think the pattern really intends for you to use this technique. I guess they just assume you will catch the float. I mean, I don't really know because the pattern doesn't say, but I just prefer doing it that way. It's a little bit tidier on the inside, and I just want to be sure that all of my tensioning is like correct and working out. I do, however, have a little bit of yarn left over, so I'm completely done with the red part now. I just knitted these 3 motifs in the red that I have now, and now the horse is going to be in blue, and the rest of the sweater is technically just white, but I still have this much of the red. This is my only ball of red, and this is how much I have left of the blue. And I have 2 more balls of the blue. So technically, if I wanted to do a repeat of the motifs in the yoke anywhere like on the sleeves or the body, I might still do that. I also thought it might be fun to have a matching hat for this. So we use like these motifs and make a hat that goes with it. I think that might be cute. So I might keep my leftover colors for that. But also I don't know how much of the white I'll have left over because I have 10 balls of it. But that is also the recommended amount in the pattern, and I did change the color work from the pattern. So in the pattern, The white in my case would be used for one of those motifs, and the background color for the yoke would be a different one, like a different contrast color. And then you would switch the main color after the yoke for the body and the sleeves. And I'm not quite sure how my yarn amounts will work out, because I've already used up one ball of white here and I'm working on my second one, and I still have like a good amount to go for the yoke. And I just don't know if I have enough for the sweater really. I hope so, because I will be shortening the sleeves quite significantly, because as I said, I'm doing the men's size, so they are a bit longer than I would need. And also the body I will shorten significantly, because that is also a lot longer than I want it to be. So I think I should be fine with using some in the yoke. But again, I'm kind of unsure with where my yarn amounts will end up. I think the sweater might be a little cropped in the end. Depends how far I get with what I have. But yeah, I just can't really assume I will have yarn left over to make a hat, so I'm not really sure what to do. I think a hat would be more fun than to reuse the pattern in the sweater, but I don't know. I guess I'll...
I wish come back to Nashville meant that I was on your mind. I wish you'd say it with that look you get when she walks by. I don't always feel like this, it's just sometimes I think that I wish you'd say, come back to Nashville, but me, come back to me.
I've spent a few evenings working on the horses, and this is where I'm at right now. I have like 1.5 rows of the color work left to go. You can already see them. They're so cute, and they actually ended up looking pretty good. I'm quite proud of that, because this was by far the most complicated part of the pattern. Obviously the color work up here is a lot easier. I think the floats are only ever like 4 stitches, and it's very easy repeats as well. Like within one pattern repeat, I think most of the time there'll be either 2 or 4 repeats already. So you really only have to remember a handful of stitches at most. I mean, you don't have to remember, you can look at the pattern, but I think if you do it that many times in a row, you will remember. I even remember the horses after doing them like twice. Anyway, for the horses, they are a lot more complex in the color work, because their shape is more irregular and also the repeat is longer. And the main problem with them is actually the floats in the back, because as you can see, there's like quite many sections where you either only work the blue or only work the white, like up here. And I like sat down before I started the horse and planned out where I would be catching my floats and putting in ladders and stuff in the back, which you can kind of see here. So I did have a plan going into this, and I mostly stuck to it, so it's been fine. I would say it's not my cleanest work, but it's alright. I think a lot of it will block out, and I mean, you can definitely see the horses, that's the main goal, but I mean, if you go up close, I guess you can kind of see that sometimes my stitches aren't the most regular. But it's okay. I also feel like you can see the blue yarn shimmer, or the blue floats shimmer through the white here over the horse, but there's nothing really I can do about that, and it's fine. I also just started my 3rd ball of the white, which worries me slightly, because I don't know if I'll have enough yarn for the rest of the sweater. If not, I have enough of the colors left over definitely to include some more color work details and hopefully get a bit further with my white yarn. And after I'm done with the horses, I actually have some space to maybe include some short rows. I haven't measured yet how deep this yoke is, so I'm gonna do that first and then see if I need any more length in it. But because I'm leaving out the last color work motif that is in the pattern, I actually have a lot of space under the horses to still include something like that. And I'm pretty excited to connect in the round and get on with the boring part of this, because this was enough stress for now. I'm only a few days into this project, but I already got all of the yoke done and also most of my first sleeve, so this is where I ended up. And for the yoke, I just finished the horses, and then this last motif down here, as I said, I just omitted because I didn't do the color change. So I had some space, which I used to make a few short rows. I think I ended up doing 5 short rows, like the back and forth, so 10 rows all together, and this is what it looks like. So this is where the back is and this is where the front is, and then I connected in the round and I just finished the ball of yarn that I was working on. That's just what I always do, and I feel like then it's like a good place to try it on. I could have tried it on with just the yoke, but I was way too lazy to put all of my stitches on a piece of scrap yarn and then put them back on the needles, so I just connected in the round and hoped it would work out. And I mean, it's definitely a big sweater on me, but I was kind of intending that, so that's fine. It looks so gorgeous. I am so in love with this already. And because I just like working the sleeves before the body, I find it a little bit easier. I picked up for the sleeve. It's a pretty standard sleeve. It's just plain knitted in the round with some decreases. I did make a few changes to it. So first of all, you're supposed to cast on quite many stitches at the underarm here, which I did all of the ones that are recommended in the pattern. I was thinking about leaving some out, but in the end I just decided to stick to the pattern for that part. So this is quite a lot of stitches, and I picked up 4 extra ones for the sleeve as well that I decreased in the first 2 rounds just to close the little gap that always happens there. I think maybe if you're knitting this bottom up like it is in the pattern, that wouldn't really happen because you're supposed to just, I guess, kitchen stitch it close. But you're like grafting it together at some point, so I think you wouldn't really have trouble with that gap. But since there was quite a lot of space still for me, I just closed it with some extra stitches. And I only knitted, I think, 3 centimeters just in the round without any decreases. That part is much longer in the pattern, but because I am following the men's size very loosely and my arms just aren't that long, I left that part a little bit shorter, and then I started on the decrease pattern. And from what I measured when I was trying it on, I still found the sleeve to be a little bit long when following that exact pattern. So I decided to decrease every 8th row, which made the whole decrease section a little bit shorter as well. So I am now at 36 centimeters for the sleeve, and I think I should be fine starting the cuff now. And I'll make that around like 4 or 5 centimeters depending on what it looks like when I try it on now. And then hopefully that sleeve should fit me. I'm a bit unsure about my gauge just because when I knit color work, I tend to knit a little bit looser, especially if it's more complicated color work like the horses here, just because I want to give the floats as much space as possible to spread out so they don't become too tight. So I think I tend to maybe not knit tight enough. And then when I was starting on the sleeve, I realized that I'm maybe now pulling my yarn like a lot tighter than I was before, so I tried to knit a little bit more loosely there. It also didn't help that I'm kind of working on a bit of a weird needle, I think. So all of the needles that I'm using for the body here, or like the yoke and the body and the sleeves of the sweater, are 4mm. So I'm not changing anything there, but I have like a couple of different brands of needles, and I used the one that I'm using for the sleeve now right at the cast on up here, and then I switched to a like 60 centimeter one that was a little bit longer, and I have this 80 centimeter one and the 120 centimeter one that the stitches on the body are on now, and like they're all like different brands and everything, and I feel like this needle is very tiny for 4mm. So if I hold it up to another 4mm needle that I have, I feel like visually this one looks smaller. So I was unsure if it's actually 4mm, and I have a little like plastic device to measure it, and they're both 4mm. They both like fit that size the best, but you can like very clearly see that when I put my other needle in there, it's like a very tight fit, whereas this one is like very loose, but it's also too big to fit in a 3.75mm opening. So it's definitely 4mm, and this is also 4mm, but they're very slightly different 4mm, so this is smaller, which I think was not really helping with me being a bit unsure with my tension. But after all, I think it's fine. Also, this yarn is very, I guess, rustic, or I don't really know about spinning, so I'm not sure how this is made exactly. But it just looks, you know, very like loosely flung fibers. They're obviously like twisted in some way, but as I said, I have no idea how that works. Anyways, some of the parts of it are like way thinner than others. I mean, this is kind of not the greatest example, but you can maybe see that this is thinner than this. And there are parts of this yarn where that is way more noticeable, where there will be like a lot of fluff in one section, and then another section where there will be like barely any fluff and the thread is a lot thinner. So That also didn't really help, so I think it just looks a little bit uneven in general because of all of that, but it's not like super noticeable, and I think most of it will probably block out. It is still a huge sleeve somehow, but it's gonna be a very cozy sweater. I also assume I'm gonna have enough yarn. I was like planning to do some math, but I like switched my ball of yarn somewhere over here, I think, so I got most of the first sleeve just out of one ball of yarn, so I'm assuming I should be fine with the yarn amounts. I'm also curious to see what the yarn will do once I block it. Obviously blocking color work is always great, and you can see all of the stitches like bloom up and the pattern really come to life. But this is pretty scratchy still, and I feel like my swatches were a bit softer. I feel like blocking really helped with that. So I'm hoping this will be comfortable to wear, especially around the neck, because it does come pretty high up, especially considering what is in the picture, because I feel like my sweater sits higher than theirs in the picture, even though their collar is even smaller. So I'm not sure how that works. Maybe my head is too big, like no idea. But it looks cool. It's very cozy, definitely, and not at all suited for the time of year, but I don't care. I am so happy about my horse sweater that is like perfect and all going well and all working out. So even my adjustments are working out. Like, I feel like I've had bad luck with adjustments recently, where I've just adjusted things that seemed smart and then in retrospect it didn't work out at all. Like, I'm almost assuming I need to run into a problem sometime soon, but somehow I am not. And I will put this on now. I will see how my sleeve looks, and then I will probably start on the second one. I don't think I will be adding any more color work to this unless my yarn estimations are very, very off. But this is just going to be a very mindless, quick project, I guess. Which, good for me, actually. I'm not gonna jinx it. I'm not gonna say anything bad.
Whenever I remember you, I'll think of interrupting Mormons at their prayer. I'll think of falling snow and rising steam. Oh, I'll think of running fast, running scared. I wish come back to Nashville meant that I was on your mind. I wish you'd say it with that look you get when she walks by. I don't always feel like this, it's just sometimes I think that I wish you'd say come back to Nashville, but mean come back to me.
I just bound off the second sleeve, so we're basically done with all of the complicated parts of the sweater and only have like some knitting for the body left to do. And this is what the sleeves ended up looking like. I changed my idea for what I wanted the cuff to be like a little bit. My idea originally was to let it cinch in but not do any decreases. In the pattern there's decreases for all of the finishings. So the collar would also be smaller and the hem would be smaller and the cuffs obviously, but I thought that would be a little too much for me, and I knitted my first iteration of the cuff just straight down from the sleeve without any decreases, and that worked out well. It did look good, but I found that with how wide this entire sweater is on me, it looked a little bit unbalanced. Like I looked like I was sinking in the sweater almost, because everything was so wide, but with the cuff also being wide, I didn't want to make the sleeve very long, because then it would just bother me if I couldn't also roll it up. So it just kind of ended up looking like the sleeves were disproportionately short, which was a little bit goofy. So I decided for the second cuff I would do the decreases that are in the pattern. I actually also made the sleeve a little bit longer, so from my 8 row decrease that I had going, I just added another repeat, so this is 8 rows longer than the first sleeve I had. And then I knitted the decrease row and like a normal cuff, and I decided to do as many rounds as I did for the collar here, so everything would be matching, and I think it looks pretty cool. It definitely looks more like just an oversized sweater on me now, rather than, you know, a sweater that is just too big for me, if that makes sense. So I'm pretty close to finishing this, I feel like. There's not a lot of body left. I'm not gonna make this very long, and I definitely will have enough yarn. I think I have 3 full balls of the white left and some of the one I had for the sleeves, so we should definitely have like one left over, and that should be enough to do some other accessory in this style probably, or maybe something else, I don't know yet. But generally a very exciting project, because like at this point there's really nothing that can go wrong anymore, is there? And this was very fast. Like the biggest mishap with this was that one of the horses was in the wrong spot. I don't remember if I told you about this, but I knitted the first few rounds of the horse collar work here, and then I noticed that one of my horses was 1 stitch off. So I like sat there for half an hour and like laddered a few stitches down like from one of the horses to put it in a different spot, and it was, you know, a little bit janky, but I don't think you can tell. I can't tell anymore, so I think that worked out fine. And if that's the biggest problem that happens with a sweater, especially a sweater I'm making that many adjustments to, I'm quite happy. So let's get this done. Try on just now, and I think I'm happy with the length. So I just worked the body in the round. There's no increases, no decreases, no nothing, just rounds and rounds and rounds of stockinette, which was actually quite nice to do because I haven't had like such a simple project in a while where you're just knitting in the round and not really thinking. I've done some stockinette projects, but like smaller ones where I was doing magic loop and all of that. So this was quite relaxing, just like sitting and knitting and turning your brain off. But I think I'm happy with the length. It like hits my hips, so now I'm gonna add the hem and then it should be perfect. This was actually one of my quickest sweater projects ever, I think. I'm pretty confident I can finish it today. I do have the day, and I did 11 rows of the ribbing for the collar and also for the cuffs here, so I think I'm gonna do that for the hem as well. And I'm gonna do an increase row here. I don't really want my ribbing to cinch in. I just don't think that would look very nice. The stockinette part I am hitting gauge for, so this is 18 stitches and 10 centimeters, and for my gauge for the ribbing I measured 22 stitches and 10 centimeters. So I'm gonna increase every 4th stitch and then every 5th stitch, and that should give me about 48 stitches. For the circumference of that, and then I'm gonna start working the 1x1 half twisted rib that I've been doing. It looks so neat, I like it so much. And then it's just Italian bind-off, which I'm actually excited for. I've started enjoying Italian bind-off for some reason. I don't know, it's such a universally hated thing that I'm kind of confused why I like it now, but I've been doing it quite a lot recently, and it's got something meditative, and it's also usually the last part you do before being done, so that's kind of fun. And the weather's also nice, so I think I can put this outside for blocking even. And then I hope it still stays cold enough that I can wear it for a tiny bit.
I wish come back to Nashville meant that I was on your mind. I wish you'd say it with that look you get when she walks by. I don't always feel like this, it's just sometimes I think that I wish you'd say, come back to Nashville, but me, come back to me.
I actually managed to finish the hem that day still. It took me a little while longer than I was expecting, so it was the evening already before I got done, just because I did work quite a lot of increases still, so it was more stitches than I was expecting. And then mainly the Italian bind-off took me forever. I really regretted saying that I was excited for it or I was looking forward to it, because on the last few items that I knitted, I did enjoy the Italian bind-off, but for this one it was so annoying to get through because the yarn is very grippy, so it sticks to itself very well and also to everything else. It was getting stuck on my hands, it was getting stuck on the ball of yarn, it was getting stuck on the sweater, and it just kept like knotting up when I was pulling it through. And I think I sat there for pretty much exactly 2 hours to bind off the hem, so it actually took forever and it was not fun anymore and I was really annoyed, but we kept through it and I blocked it, which was actually also a little bit scary because the colors up here, they're pretty vibrant, the red and the blue, so I was worried that it might stain the white while blocking, And then I put it in water, and the water immediately like changed colors. So I panicked and took it out of there and tried to wash this part first, like just rinse it out with water in hopes that at least if it's stained, it would only be like in between here where it wouldn't be as noticeable later. But I think it's fine, like it didn't really change colors. I've never had a problem with that. I've heard that other people struggle with lighter parts of a colorwork sweater getting stained while blocking. It has never happened to me, but I'm like afraid it might. So I think I like saved it. I don't know if anything would have happened if I had just left it in the water the first time, but it worked out somehow. And it took a while to dry, but it is completely dry now and very cozy. It didn't really grow, but that I was expecting. I kind of had the same thing with my swatch. I actually really like when yarns do that because it's much easier to measure and try it on while you're working on it. Rather than a yarn that will like grow a lot later on. So that was pretty fun, and in general I'm incredibly happy with this project. It was so fast, it was really fun to do. There was a part up here that was very interesting to work where you needed some focus to work on, and then there was a large part of it that was just mindless knitting, but finally something that's like mindless in the round where you really don't have to have any thoughts at all, no turning your work, no magic loop, no increases, no decreases, no nothing. So that was really cool to do. And it's actually not as warm as I was expecting, so it is a full wool sweater and I think it can definitely keep you warm, but just wearing it like that I'm not completely overheating, which is a problem I have much more when I'm wearing alpaca, for example. So this is pretty great. I think I can still get a little bit of wear out of this. I ended up making it a little bit more cropped just because I thought it would look more flattering that way. I have a bunch of yarn left over actually, so I have I think 2 balls and a little bit of the white, I have 2 full balls and a little bit of the blue, and I still have like half a ball of the red. So I'm actually not quite sure what I want to do with that. I'm usually a big fan of using up the leftovers while I'm already working on the main project, because otherwise I know that I will just stash them away and never touch them again. So I would like to start a project with that. I was talking about making a hat earlier in this video, and I still think a hat would look really cute, but it would use up very little yarn for how much yarn I still have. So I might make a hat and then still have a bunch left over, so I don't know how sensible that is. It's definitely not enough to make another sweater, at least not one that is oversized enough for me to want to wear it. I don't think this yarn would be great to do something tighter. Again, this yarn is softened up with blocking a little bit, but it's still scratchy, which is fine to me. I feel like some animal fibers are itchy to me, which is something I don't like at all. If it's just scratchy, I can deal with it. Like, this is fine. I will forget about this while wearing it, but I don't think I would love to have a garment in this that is very tight fitting. And other than that, I don't know what I could make with these yarn amounts. I think the blue and the red were a great contrasting color for something like this with the white in between, but I think if they're right next to or on top of each other, they wouldn't really work very well. Maybe a scarf would be the best for the amount of yarn that I have, or like some kind of balaclava hood type of thing. I have done some searching on Ravelry, but I haven't really come to any conclusion there yet, so I guess I'll see if I come up with something that I'm self-drafting, or if I can find any pattern that I would like to at least loosely follow. If you have any suggestions what to do with a little bit of leftover léttlopi, you can let me know in the comments. And I would also love to hear about your experience knitting either this or any other vintage pattern. I found it quite nice that it was so short and to the point. I feel like it made it easier to understand the pattern at a glance, but I also see why many modern patterns aren't written that way and have a lot more detail. I also don't really write that way. I also include a lot of detail and explanation when I write patterns, just because if you haven't tried a wide variety of techniques and you don't necessarily know how they work or what they do in a sweater, it is quite difficult to make decisions about how to approach a sweater like that. But I feel like for me and my skill level right now, this was fine. I also obviously adjusted a bunch about this, which all worked out. I think the only thing that isn't like perfect about the sweater is my gauge where the horses here are. I feel like my gauge here is a tiny bit looser than everywhere else, but it's really only noticeable if I actually look for it. So I think that's fine. I mean, there's always still a little bit more experience to gain, especially when knitting color work like that. And I'm very happy with the outcome. I think this is a very cozy sweater that I will get a lot of wear out of, and I will see you next time.
Last night you went and bought some cigarettes, and I know that she hates it when you smoke.